10 greatest psychological thrillers of the 20th century, ranked. Psychological thrills make for one of cinema's oldest and most engrossing allures. The spectacle of complex and morally questionable characters battling inner conflicts in winding, agonizing stories of unpredictability and danger conjures a transfixing sense of dreadful paranoia. Some of the hit films of recent years show the genre is very much in vogue today, with titles like Black Swan, Parasite, and Gone Girl standing among the most celebrated pictures of the 21st century so far. However, many of the most defining and disconcerting psychological thrillers are found in the enduring classics of 20th century cinema. Ranging from Alfred Hitchcock's horrific hits of the mid-century to the dread and divinity of David Fincher's 90s gems, from some of the greatest pictures in Hollywood history to heart-stopping highlights of international cinema, these 10 mind-manipulating thrillers stand as the very best of the genre from the 1900s. 10-Foot Wake in Fright, 1971. A waking nightmare of brutish masculinity and rural morality set against the feverish backdrop of an Australian outback summer. Wake in Fright is a movie of imposing, intimidating intensity that follows John Grant, Gary Bond, a teacher returning to Sydney from his remote placement for the holidays only to find himself waylaid in a small mining town after a costly gambling spree. What ensues is a hellscape of hard drinking and depravity that brings Grant to the cusp of sanity and even leaves him contemplating suicide. Cutting deep into the national identity of Australia, Wake in Fright dissects the difference between rural and urban lifestyles with an emphasis on alcoholism, violence, and the suffocating expanses of the outback. Its confronting depiction of a kangaroo hunt, which was the result of filming a real-life hunt by licensed professionals, is perhaps its most striking and infamous sequence. Not for the faint of heart, Wake in Fright is an unflinching immersion into Australian subculture, one that torments viewers with its atmospheric might. At the behest of Martin Scorsese, it is one of only 2 films to have been screened twice at the Cannes Film Festival, and it remains one of the most important pictures in the context of Australian cinema. 9-Foot Rebecca, 1940. Standing as Alfred Hitchcock's first film produced in America and his only Best Picture winner at the Academy Awards, Rebecca is an enduring masterpiece of simmering suspense and romantic corrosion that enthralls audiences with its haunting majesty and its lavish allure. Joan Fontaine stars as a naive young woman who marries the decadent widower Maxime de Winter, Laurence Olivier, and moves into his mansion. As she struggles to connect with her cold and distant husband while facing opposition from his jealous housekeeper, she also unearths terrible truths of the former Mrs. de Winter. Imbued with a garnish of Gothic splendor, Rebecca is an intoxicating viewing experience. Hitchcock handles the technical elements of the film with his trademark innovation and impact, while every member of the cast is phenomenal in their roles, conjuring a picture of ghostly suspense and rich atmospheric thrills. In its faithfulness to Daphne du Maurier's original novel, the film torments the audience with its ideas of insecurity, identity, and obsession, its oppressive setting of Gothic eeriness and psychological suspense, and its deft use of unreliable narration to place viewers in a state of convoluted discontentment that is both captivating and nerve-wracking. 8-Foot Persona, 1966, featuring the intrinsic depth and cerebral, thematic might that Ingmar Bergman was always renowned for, while also incorporating an element of imposing psychological dread. Persona thrives as a gripping exploration of identity and duality. It follows Elizabeth Volger, Liv Ullmann, an accomplished stage actor who lapses into a speech impairment after a moment of blankness during a performance. She retreats to a beach house to recover with only the company of a nurse, Anna, B.B. Anderson. And while her muteness proves to be a barrier between the two women, they find themselves experiencing a bizarre emotional convergence as time goes on. While it is comfortably at home being labeled as an avant-garde drama about humanity and connection, Persona wields an eerie atmospheric intensity that preys on the audience's mentality with its overwhelming surrealism, harrowing yet gorgeous cinematography, and its plunge into notions of insanity. An impressionable whirlwind of a film, it stands among Bergman's greatest and most daring feats, a compelling drama of the human mind that thrills with its unique execution that, at all costs, refuses conventionality with both palpable disdain and haunting yet poetic grace. 7-Foot Les Diaboliques, 1955, incorporating elements of psychological duress, mystery tension, and heart-stopping horror. Les Diaboliques is a masterclass in anxiety-inducing cinema that stands as one of France's most frightful and famous features. Christina Vera Clouseau is a meek and nervous woman who collaborates with her husband's mistress and co-worker, Nicole Simone Signoret, to orchestrate the murder of the miserable, tyrannical man they both suffer at the hands of. While they execute the crime successfully, the two women find themselves plagued by mystifying oddities and growing paranoia when the body disappears. A medley of shocking plot twists, masterful suspense, and thorough exploration of its characters' morality and the psychological manipulation and torment they face. Les Diaboliques exudes a sinister atmospheric gravitas that is as hypnotic as it is harrowing. Enrapturing with its wicked wrath, it engulfs viewers in its world of surrealism and uncertainty from its opening moments and refuses to relinquish its grasp until its unforgettable ending. Even then, Les Diaboliques tends to linger hauntingly on the mind, a quality that enshrines it among the greatest psychological thrillers world cinema has ever seen. 6 Foot Say 7 on, 1995. Relentlessly macabre, shockingly gruesome, and unforgettably brutal. Say 7 on is a cerebral crime thriller of festering evil and bleak pessimism that encapsulates the graphic edge the subgenre found throughout the 1990s. It follows disillusioned detective William Somerset, Morgan Freeman, and his young and headstrong partner, David Mills, Brad Pitt, as they investigate an at-large serial killer using the 7 deadly sins as a motivation for his murders. Amid the ceaseless rain, gloomy sets, and David Fincher's trademark technical perfection, Say 7 and finds an invasive tone of griminess and unending cynicism. But its genius is how it uses glimpses of hope to conjure a thematic battle between good and evil that exists largely in the depths of the viewer's mind. In this regard, its grotesque visuals and callous tone are immensely powerful, but so too is Somerset's easing faithlessness in the world as he befriends Mills and his wife, Tracy, Gwyneth Paltrow. With its gut-wrenching finale, Say 7 and leaves its audience with a numbing tale of sin, morality, evil, and injustice. It remains one of the most disturbing and haunting movies the genre has ever seen. 5 Foot Rear Window, 1954. One of several of the defining masterpieces that mark Alfred Hitchcock's excellence in thriller cinema. Rear Window is a timelessly gripping tale of invasive curiosity and murderous intrigue. James Stewart stars as L.B. Jeffries, a photographer bedridden with a broken leg who takes to spying on his neighbors to pass the time. What begins as playful indecency soon becomes a frightful fever dream as Jeffries suspects one of his neighbors has committed a murder and enlists his girlfriend and his nurse to help him find the truth. What is so ingenious about Rear Window is how it engulfs the viewer in Jeffries' mind. His prying eyes are our wonder. His morbid discovery, our daunting dread. His confinement and immobility, our heart-stopping sense of entrapment and tension. And when the murderous Lars Thorwald, Raymond Burr, casts his ire at Jeffries, our blood runs as cold as the picture-taking protagonists. A masterpiece of perspective that enraptures with its elegant craft and snappy dialogue as much as it does with its deadly mystery. Rear Window is as delightful and devious a psychological thriller that has ever been made. For Peeping Tom, 1960. There are a great many thrillers that have only found their praise retrospectively. Movies with content and subject matter that help usher in a new age of cinematic sensitivities but aren't properly celebrated until years later. Initially met with critical derision and effectively ending. Director Michael Powell's career, Peeping Tom stands as one of the finest movies of this ilk, a bold and confronting thriller that was years ahead of its time with its focus on a killer's psychology, meta-commentary on exploitation in filmmaking, and its progressive attitude regarding violence in movies. The British film follows troubled loner Mark Lewis, Karl-Heinz Bohm, a reclusive studio camera assistant who spends his nights preying on women so he can murder them and film their dying moments. As his intensifying obsession with his macabre hobby attracts police interest, he also starts to develop an unlikely romance with Helen, Anna Massey, a young neighbor who takes a dangerous interest in his so-called documentary on fear. Piercing, profound, and presented with a great many layers that challenge the mind of the viewer, Peeping Tom has overcome its initial outrage to be a cult classic of thriller cinema and one of the most psychologically pointed movies of all time. 3 Foot The Night of the Hunter, 1955. Another movie that is universally celebrated today but was dismissed upon release. The Night of the Hunter stands as an absorbing tale of immorality and greed. Unfortunately, due to its poor reception, it also stands as the only film Charles Laughton ever directed, a tragedy considering the picture's bold storytelling and impressive visual display. The ever-impactful Robert Mitchum stars as Harry Powell, a serial killer who presents himself as a preacher to endear himself to the widow of an executed felon, hoping she, or her kids, can be persuaded to tell him where their late loved one stashed his stolen money. Laughton's inspired departure from grounded realism only heightens the film's atmospheric richness, allowing for a vibrant visual style that ensnares viewers while feeding Mitchum's astounding portrayal of pure evil. The end result is strikingly nightmarish in style and tone, an intense and unsettling demolition of the sanctity of faith and childhood innocence that terrifies with its assault on notions of peace and goodness. While one naturally wonders what Lawton would have achieved with subsequent films had his debut been better received, it is easy to be content with the glory he achieved with The Night of the Hunter, a spellbinding, skin-crawling masterpiece of psychological dread that stands among the best and most underrated pictures of its century. 2-Foot Psycho, 1960. One isn't dubbed the master of suspense for nothing, marking the third Hitchcock hit on this list. Psycho stands as the filmmaker's most defining and enduring glory, an enrapturing tale of depravity and death. It begins by following Secretary Marion Crane, Janet Leigh, as she steals a large sum of money from her employer and leaves town, never halting until she stops for rest at Bates Motel, an establishment run by a soft young man who suffers under the thumb of his domineering mother. In the aftermath of Crane's mysterious disappearance, her sister and her lover launch an investigation as to her whereabouts and come across Bates Motel in the process. Exemplifying so much of Hitchcock at his absolute best, Psycho thrives with its ability to worm its way into the viewer's mind and fester with a haunting majesty, a byproduct of its effective use of shadow and high-contrast imagery, ability to manipulate the audience's manipulation, and its defiance of narrative norms. Best exemplified by its famous shower scene that sees the protagonist killed just halfway through the movie. Further strengthened by its array of piercing performances and its atmospheric intensity, Psycho is a thriller of uncommon brilliance. It stands as one of the most iconic titles of 20th century cinema and is a truly quintessential watch for any lover of classic film. 1-Foot The Silence of the Lambs, 1991. Towing the line between psychological suspense and outright horror, The Silence of the Lambs is as marvelous and maniacal a thriller as has ever been made. Powered by two exceptional performances, it transpires as FBI cadet Clarice Starling, Jodie Foster, is tasked with interviewing detained cannibalistic serial killer and brilliant psychiatrist Hannibal Lecter, Sir Anthony Hopkins, to see if she can gain any insights into an active case with a killer dubbed Buffalo Bill, Ted Levine, abducting young women to use their skin. With time of the essence as another victim going missing, Clarice must play Lecter's game and divulge personal information in order to get him to talk. Building suspense through character development and disturbing themes rather than through jump scares, The Silence of the Lambs masterfully dismantles the psychological barriers of the viewer to activate a primal sense of dread and terror. This is only amplified by Lecter's unresolved fate, conjuring an air of lingering unease that remains apparent long after the credits roll. Every aspect of the film, from its performances to its invasive cinematography, conspires to make for a chilling viewing experience. Director Jonathan Demme's success results in not only a picture of ceaseless intensity, but the greatest psychological thriller of all time.